Hi there, my name is Megan Summerall. I am the CEO and founder of the Pink Bee. And here at the Pink Bee, we serve overwhelmed women that are on a quest to have work-life harmony. And we do that through all things time management, organization, and productivity for women. I first started working with Mindi very early in my business, and I was had been over 20 years in corporate, had a very successful career as an IT corporate executive, and so I was going through this transition of leaving a corporate life behind and becoming a true solopreneur. And thankfully, I met Mindi early in business because I didn't recognize right away that I was carrying a lot of corporate baggage, if you will, and just a lot of preconceived notions about what building a business had to look like. And so I was kind of in a state of a lot of inner conflict and knew I needed to work my way through this if I was going to actually grow this business and make it something successful. I would say when I was starting my business, and again, tied back to some to my corporate baggage here, my definition of success is what I had seen for over 20 years in a very diverse experience in the software world. Success meant working a lot of long hours. Sometimes it meant not even going home for 2 days and sleeping in the office. The harder you worked, the more successful you were. And a lot of the messages even that I was getting as I was starting to research, what does it mean to grow an online business? It was a lot of hustle culture, right? Stay up late, get up early. You might have to, short-term sacrifices for your family for long-term success. And none of that sat well for me because I was leaving the corporate space because I was exhausted, because I was burnt out. And so I felt like there had to be another way, but I had so much preconceived notions and hardwiring of what it had to look like that I wasn't sure how to untangle all of that. When I was first working with Mindi, I knew I needed to really focus in on this belief that success meant working harder, working longer, running faster, running harder. I knew from my own background and skill set that there were ways to do things more efficiently. I had this underlying, I don't know, it was almost like a little ember of belief that what if I could redefine what success looked like, especially as a working mom? What if I could build a business with really clear boundaries of my time? And I had enough of this spark of belief that it was possible, but I just wasn't quite sure of the how, both pragmatically and mentally. Because even if I could take a very tactical step, my brain was still programmed to constantly be telling me, you're not doing enough, you're not going fast enough, you're not going hard enough. I noticed right away it was very different than other coaching programs or online programs I had taken. And honestly, it made me uncomfortable and I was very nervous. I have a degree in math. I worked in software. I take a very pragmatic, tactical, step-by-step approach to stuff, and had always worked in a very masculine corporate environment. And so early in business, I was, investing in how to build things, how to do things, step-by-step approaches. But again, I just kept hitting this wall because of what was going on between my ears. And so I knew it was time to invest some energy and time and money in working with someone that was going to help me do that. And I knew right away on my first call with Mindi, I'm someone that struggles, or used to, I don't anymore, struggled with vulnerability and just kind of letting it all hang out, if you will. Again, I was wired in a masculine corporate world. You don't do that in the workplace. And within the first 5 minutes of talking with Mindi, I felt seen, I felt heard, and I felt completely safe to say absolutely anything without judgment. And that was a really big first step for me. And that's what kept me coming back call after call, and continuing now for several years to continue my work with Mindi. When I think about the years I've spent working with Mindi, it's really hard for me to pinpoint a specific moment or a specific decision or action in business where I just went, oh my gosh, there's been a transformation. For me, it's really when I look back at where I was 4 years ago versus where I am today in terms of the relationship I have with my time, which is ironic considering that's what I teach. But more importantly, the confidence that I have in the decisions that I make, both professionally and personally. I used to spend countless thousands of hours overthinking, overprocessing, overanalyzing, really coming from a place of fear. And now, when I look back at how I used to churn and ruminate and make decisions and stress and anxiety versus the place that I'm in now, when I'm placed in a position of making a tough either strategic or personnel or any kind of decision, I have a whole toolkit of resources that Mindy has taught me that I get to pull from that allow me to make decisions quicker, way more confidently. And after I've made them, I now don't spend the next 3 weeks ruminating on it and overthinking and wondering if I made a bad decision. It's just a decision, and I know how to execute it, and I know how to change it if I need to later. I really kind of had this identity of, uh, I'm running a business. I'm running a side business, if you will, which I hate. And I had a lot of preconceived notions in my own head of what running a business versus what running a company was. And so I never felt comfortable saying I was a CEO. I'm like, I'm not a CEO. I'm a solopreneur. I was a mompreneur, right? I'm not a CEO. I'm just a woman who's building a business. Since working with Mindy, I've now completely changed my views on business versus company. And I now very proudly and confidently say I am the CEO of a seven-figure company. And to other people, the difference of business or company may not make a difference to them, but to me, mentally, it was a huge shift because again, I had beliefs that in order to be the CEO of a company, you had to work 80 or 90 hours a week. You had to be stressed out all the time. You couldn't go on vacation. But now I get to embrace being the CEO of a thriving company, and I only work 20 to 25 hours a week. I take minimum 6 weeks vacation, and my time is truly mine. And having that shift, I believe, is instrumental in me also being able to empower and show other women that they can have a thriving company, be the CEO of a company, and it doesn't have to look the way a lot of our masculine counterparts make it look like. The biggest shift that I've experienced in the last 12 months in particular, again, I've been working with Mindy for a while. We are talking about business here, so I do think it's important to touch on revenue. Obviously, I've got the time part under control, but I had kind of hit this plateau of believing and being okay with what the revenue was going to look like in my business. And once I hit what I kind of thought my first goal was, I thought, well, this is it, and I'm comfortable, and this is enough. And then over this last 12 to 16 months in particular, I've been able to break through this is it and this is enough to say, but it wasn't about the money up front. It was about how many more people could I help, right? So if we can currently serve a couple thousand women a year, what impact would it have on the world if we could serve 10,000 women a year? And I kept again having to rework this idea of in order to serve more meant we had to work harder or do more things, and realizing no, actually we get to define the way this looks. So we've now been able to, we're on track to actually double our revenue from 2024 to 2025, which is astounding at this stage of business. That usually doesn't happen. But again, it's not so much about the revenue, it's about the impact. So we are now serving more women than ever and have added two new offerings to our business, which is again expanding the number of people that we're able to serve. And I am now to the point where I'm like, I just think the sky's the limit. There is no limit to how many women we can reach anymore. Thanks to working with Mindy, I am now no longer that woman that would lie awake at night thinking there's only so much I can do. And I no longer attach my self-worth to other people's definition of my productivity. Because I think that's a big trap for women in particular is this belief if I'm not running harder, if I'm not going faster, if I'm not working more, my worth is gone. And so I now, my definition of worth is almost completely flipped. How much can I do in the smallest amount of time possible? It's like every year I challenge myself to work just a little less and actually be able to do more. And by doing that and by having Mindy's tools to support me through that complete transformation, my hope is that other women are able to see and hear what we're doing here, and they can start to rewrite the script for themselves as well. If you are someone that has considered, entering into this type of work with Mindy, I would tell you, like, run, don't walk. Don't make the same mistake I did and overthink it. Some of the things that were holding me back from just jumping in with 2 feet right away. Again, I was very afraid to be vulnerable. I had an unhealthy view of what I thought therapy was. And so I was like, oh, well, that's just what this is. And I'm someone who likes to take action. And I think a lot of high achieving women were action takers. And so you kind of think, well, working with someone that's going to help me with my mindset, like I want actionable steps. And I had a preconceived notion of what this kind of work was going to be like, kind of thinking about the lying back in a chair in a therapist's office. And that is not the case at all. And that's what I think makes Mindy's work so impactful is at the end of every single call, there is an action item. There is a tangible homework assignment I am given. There is a follow-up email reminding me of it. And in certain calls that we have, I am learning a new tool or a skill that now I get to have because I will find myself sometimes out on a walk and I'll be having a repeat conversation of, something popping into my head, and I can now stop myself and go, no, wait. I remember when I talked to Mindy about this a few months ago, and here was the strategy that we used to stop, this pattern from happening. So not only am I building on skills that I get to have for the rest of my life because she teaches such actionable things, I'm continuing to learn and grow with new ones with Mindy. So if you are an action taker, if you are someone that has a desire for more, whatever more looks like for you, you're going to have the most unique, empowered experience with Mindy.